Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we continue our ongoing coverage of the Eritrean invasion of the Tigray region and the civil war taking place inside the former state of Ethiopia. So, today, we're going to have a look at the Eritrean military. And we've received reports that indicate the Eritrean army, the army that has been deployed into northern Tigray, the Eritrean army that has been deployed into the Afar region, is coming under immense strain. So much strain that there are indications that elements of the Eritrean army could be ready to defect to the Tigrayan Defense Forces. There have been reports of Eritrean army units surrendering to the Tigrayan Defense Forces in the northern Tigray region. The conditions of the Eritrean army, especially in the Afar region, has become, by what some analysts would say is horrendous conditions. Lack of supply, lack of food, in some cases lack of water being provided by the Eritrean government for its forces that have been deployed in the Afar region. We have heard of arrests being made in the Afar region. And in all probability, those arrests are the internal security apparatus of the Eritrean military arresting defecting soldiers that are trying to leave Eritrean army service. Look, if we have cases in which Eritrean athletes who live in relatively good conditions inside of Eritrea, compared to, let's say, army units, individual enlisted conscripted soldiers, or even officers of the Eritrean military, lieutenants, captains, lower echelon officers that command platoons and companies, maybe even battalions, probably do not live the same standard the same standard that even Eritrean athletes that go around the world to compete live under. And we see those athletes, as they travel around the world, oftentimes defect. They want the hell out of Eritrea. Well, why is that? Well, because it is a despotic regime, quite possibly more despotic than North Korea. Not sure how you do that, but that's what we hear. So it's not surprising at all that we would be receiving these reports that the Eritrean army, or units of the Eritrean army, are attempting to defect over to the Tigrayan Defense Forces. They can't defect to the Abiy loyalist forces because Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki are allies. Isaias Afwerki is assisting Abiy Ahmed in installing the same type of regime inside the former state of Ethiopia that we see inside of Eritrea. It is known that Abiy Ahmed wishes to stay in power for an extended period of time. There has been some information coming out of the inner circle of the Abiy Ahmed regime that indicates that he wishes to be the longest running African dictator in history. And he feels because of his younger age, he has that possibility. That's a kind of a completely different story. But again, it would appear that Eritrean army units, and again, given the situation on the ground that's taking place in the northern Tigray region, in the Afar region, these forces, this massive force of the Eritrean army, again, largely conscripted. We're hearing now that former members of the Eritrean army have been reconscripted into the Eritrean army. So again, when you become of fighting age, when you graduate grade school, prior to going to university, you have to serve inside the Eritrean army. Everyone, man and woman alike. And you serve inside of that despotic state for years. There's no set term limit. There's no terms of service. You could serve in the Eritrean army for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. There have been reports of some individuals serving over a decade involuntarily. And then those personnel, again, once discharged, and they're finally able to leave the Eritrean army, we're now seeing them reconscripted back into the Eritrean army to go fight inside of the former state of Ethiopia, specifically northern Tigray, the Afar region. And we've even heard of Eritrean army units deployed in Oromia to fight against the Oromo Liberation Army, as that civil war within the Oromia region is still going on. We still hear about the constant use of air power against isolated Oromo villages and towns, and the continued use of the Eritrean army, even in Oromia. So you can see why, especially, again, the conditions now that we're seeing on the ground, especially when some of these Eritrean army units are being ambushed and destroyed in the field as they have entered the mountainous northern Tigray region, a region that they're not entirely familiar with, a region that's incredibly hostile to their presence. One reason behind that is, again, because of the logistical problems within the Eritrean army. The Eritrean army is forced to pillage the countryside inside of northern Tigray. They go into these cities such as Shire, Shiraro, Axum, other areas, and they take what they need because they are not adequately supplied with food, water, and the basic necessities that you have to supply to a military unit in the field. So this we're looking at, and again, an incredibly hostile population to the Eritrean army inside of northern Tigray. But right now on the ground, early reports, once the Eritrean army took control of Shire and moved east into Axum, Adwa, and then reportedly towards Adigrat, initially was looked as a success. However, as I talked about before, that appearance of success is now turning into something different. the Eritrean army, the Abiy loyalist forces on the ground, operating along the B30 and the A2, are not able to control these areas that they have taken. And now we have received a multitude of reports that indicate that many of these units, especially the units in and near Adwa, are in fact surrounded and are unable to move. They are unable to get supplies. And they are being constantly harried by the Tigrayan Defense Forces. Again, reports indicate from the Eritrean army, the Abiy loyalist forces, that wherever they are present, be it in Tigray, be it in Axum, be it in the north, Shiraro, Adidaro, movement and the ability to obtain supplies is being severely degraded by the continued operations of the Tigrayan Defense Forces. So very, very difficult situation for the Eritrean military, and that's probably why we are hearing these reports now coming out of the Eritrean army. And again, not just in the Tigray region, but there are also some concerning reports regarding the Eritrean military in the Afar region as well. But that's where we kind of sit for today. Again, the status quo continues. The Eritrean, the Abiy loyalist forces continue to try to assert control of northern Tigray, and the Tigrayan Defense Forces continue to resist, continue to conduct a industrial strength insurgency against these occupational forces. So we'll continue to watch very, very closely and report ongoing information. I do want to report one other piece of information that we received. So apparently, several days ago, as the Eritrean army moved west to east, and when they had entered areas near Axum and Adwa, they apparently tried to move south. Eritrean army units. They tried to move into the Tinbian region. And specifically, they tried to move in a direction from Adwa down this road here, the Adwa to Mekelle Road. And the information that we have is that it did not go well for those units. They were immediately set upon and essentially destroyed as they tried to enter south into these this rugged, sparsely populated area, which has become the traditional stronghold of the Tigrayan Defense Forces when invaded. So we saw that back in 2021, and again, history repeats itself. Very interesting that the Eritrean army would even try to move south from Axum and Adwa into these areas. So it'd be interesting to see what is the decision-making process of the Eritrean and Abiy loyalist forces to undertake such an endeavor when they don't even control many areas along the A2 and B30. So very interesting, and we'll again continue to report and bring you more information as soon as we get it. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend, and as always, have a good day.